Okay. We'll call the meeting of the North County Clean Water Consortium to order. And just real quick, we're gonna have introductions in a minute, but first time data science, I'm. So one thing I want to do before we start is I want to run a real quick slideshow that explains what the consortium is and how it's set up. So Matt's going to do that for us here and share screen. So just give everybody an idea of what it is.
Okay. Share. Okay.
Okay, what is the Morrow County Clean Water Consortium? Next slide, please. The Morrow County Clean Water Consortium is a separate entity created as a partnership between the Board of Morrow and Morrow County. The mission: promote access to safe drinking water for unfiltered areas in Morrow County by funding, developing, and building projects to provide drinking water to residents affected by nitrate contamination. And that comes from our IGA agreement. The consortium structure governed by a board of directors. My eyesight's really good. Consisting of 2 members from the Board of Morrow and 2 from Morrow County. The board members are Lisa Middlesdorf and Kelly Doherty. County members Dave Sykes and Tamara Babbitt. Day-to-day business conducted by the appointed managing director, which is Matt Jensen, who's right here. Advisory members appointed for their knowledge and direct experience in consortium mission, and they'll provide non-binding strategic advice to the board. This is a long set. Sources of financing: major financing for clean water infrastructure projects come from private, state, and federal grants. Operational expenses funded initially from local government sources. Okay, consortium's ultimate goal, with it really plain, is to plan, finance, build, pipe in the ground, we like to say, clean water, clean drinking water infrastructure in Morrow County on that area. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here in the evening. I know you're all busy. This is a good time, but we have a good agenda this week or this meeting. So with that, I'd like to go around the room and have everybody just introduce yourselves. And so my name is Dave Sykes. I'm the chairman. I'm Morrow County Commissioner.
Matt Jensen, County Administrator and Managing Director for the Clean Water Consortium.
Valerie Ballard with Morrow County, Acting Secretary.
Kevin Ince with Morrow County, the Finance Director, and we're the county's the fiscal agent for the consortium.
I'm Tamara Babbitt, the County Planning Director.
My name is Isabel Gonzalez. My name is Ana Maria Rodriguez. I am a community member.
Barbara Phillips, Community Member from here again. Lisa Middlesdorf, Board of Morrow. Corey Griggs, Boardman Community Development Association and Boardman Chamber.
Brandon Hammond, City of Boardman. Junior Grego, City of Boardman.
Luis Campos, City of Boardman. Mike Lees, I'm a civil engineer for Anderson Perry and Associates, and I'm also the City of Boardman's engineer.
Kelly Doherty, Board of Morrow.
Aaron Bumpus, City of Oregon Advisory.
Could we go online? Ronan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Ronan and Gloria with GSI Water Solutions. I'm the project manager on the Drinking Water Roadmap project, consulting with Morrow County.
Okay. Who else we got on there, Ronan?
Nick Ducote.
Nick?
Nick Ducote here. I've been a grant writer for Morrow County for maybe about 3 years, and have done a good bit of funding work with the county and in the Guama on public infrastructure projects.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
Griffin Beach is on maybe.
Okay.
Griffin Beach.
Okay. Anybody else can introduce themselves real quick? On Zoom? Okay, so anyway, okay, first of all, I'd like to talk to the advisory committee. We're glad you're here. And during the whole process here, we want your input, okay? We want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to join in the conversation. We want you to ask questions, we want you to feel part of this group. So please remember that as we're going through our business and our discussions. Jump in there, you know, because that's what we want, that's why we want you here, yeah.
Who is the advisory members that are in the room currently?
Will all the advisory members raise your hand, please?
I
Okay,
just wasn't aware who they were.
okay,
We've got 5 of the 11 that are here. There was a couple that weren't available.
Okay.
Some I'm still expecting to come.
okay. So that's, the board, the 4 members, like you saw from the slide, they vote on the business items. But we really want to hear from you and want you to ask questions. Don't be shy, jump in there. So, with that, we'll start in with our business items.
And then do minutes.
What's that? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. The first up on our, I'm sorry. Okay, first item would be approval of minutes from May 20th, 2025 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I just have one thing to add. It didn't list me as being present and then it showed me as.
Oh.
Right.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve with that correction then? Any board member want to make that motion?
I will make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? Okay, we move the second to discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Okay. So with the business item, we already did our advisory committee introductions. And next we'll jump to Matt, who's our manager. He's gonna be doing a lot of this, so, and pretty much from here on. So we'll start with our meeting schedule.
So one of the things as we get started is just for scheduling and planning sakes, we'd like to have input on setting a specific date or time in the month to have a recurring meeting. Right now, we're targeted to meet every other month. This one would be the second Tuesday of June. Our next one would be in August, and so we're just looking for input from the board and the advisory committee, if that works out best, on which days might work better. And so we can kind of set that as a recurring item. We can adjust that as necessary in the future, but if we set one just to allow public and the board and advisory committee to set firm plans. And so I don't know if this second Tuesday of the month works well. I'd love to start with that. Otherwise, if there's any input that needs to be made, we'd love to hear from you.
And this is a good chance for the advisory to jump in here and let us know, because we report to tell this, and we want to have meeting times that work for you guys, so.
Question, Matt,
Mhm.
and the board is, if whatever's agreed to, if you can put it in a full calendar so
Yes.
that everybody has it. But I do have consistency bills for the public and all that, and it's easier for everybody. So.
So you put out the second Tuesday of every month.
Second Tuesday seems to avoid holidays and such, and just if 6 o'clock works for people's schedules, we'd be happy to support that.
Okay.
I saw a thumbs up from Mike.
Do we feel like every other month is enough right now?
That's the minimum. If we wanted to do monthly, that's an option.
The bylaws just say that at least that many, that we can, there are more. I feel the same way Lisa does, especially getting going, that we meeting once money.
Just since we got 2 city managers, is that conflict with any of my meetings that you know? Okay. And I know Hefner's on Monday. I'm not sure of the, so it doesn't really matter.
Question for the county on planning commission, county, second Tuesday evening, okay or not?
It is, we're the last Tuesday.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of us.
So if we wanted to do the second Tuesday of the month, 6 p.m. right now, planned monthly. And just as we get going, because we do have a budget, we're going to talk about the process. And we need to get adopt a budget. That would be nice to do at the next meeting.
Okay.
I'd like to
Please.
make a motion that we Meet every month.
For a
For
while.
6 months at least,
Second Tuesday, 6 p.m.
every month.
Here.
I occasionally have advisory committee meetings that day.
Daniel's got thinking.
Okay,
I can dictate,
works for me.
You say it's the-
AI dictation, that's the word.
Or I guess, okay, I'm sure it's separate.
Do we want to set, the place right now, or do we want to go on? You want to rotate, or you want to have it here? What's your thoughts on that?
This is great for me.
Well,
Great for me.
Is it okay with you?
it's mainly North County, so,
Mhm.
I don't have a problem coming this way. The majority of people are over here on this.
No,
side.
it needs to be North County.
Yeah,
I was
no,
just
I'm
thinking
talking
about-
over in Boardman, I'm looking at Morrow.
Boardman is fine for me. Seems like I'm the only one from here again, so.
But
Debbie is
we
supposed
do
to
have
be over
Debbie,
here.
Debbie Rady has
Oh,
joined,
is she?
and Justin Green from H2OEO has joined.
But Debbie might be at work, so she's here at work.
I have a rental down here, so I can only make that my second day.
Okay.
Okay, is that okay to put that in your motion? The board?
Yeah.
Board,
And that's, as a.
second Tuesday, every month, 6 p.m. Here a second,
I'll second.
moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, all opposed, motion carried. Okay, Matt, let's go.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The next two items, actually, if I could just kind of preface it, we have two presentations. The first one is from City of Boardman. There was a discussion during our last meeting about their water system, which we are currently pursuing a project that would possibly connect to that. And there was question on nitrate levels within their system. And as I reached out to the city manager and just asked if he'd have the information, he provided that and offered in discussion that they would come and just do a short presentation on that. So I'll turn it over. I'm not sure what from the four-headed monster wants to discuss, but we'll turn it over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, I'll start us off. Thanks for the opportunity. I think the main purpose of all of us being here is just to bring clarity and just the facts. I think sometimes you get a rumor mill going on, you get gossip that happens, and we just need to dispel completely how open the information, the documentation that the city has to go through to not just nitrates, but everything. Everything we record goes to OH, the Oregon Health Authority, it is placed. So everyone should have one of these. These are specifically for nitrates. You can get the same documentation on the website. The steps are listed below on those steps, so anyone can go and look the same information up, and you can go for anything. You can look for lead, copper.
VOCs, SOCs, DODs, any testing the city does on OHA website.
So, and I'll let these guys speak to it because they know a whole lot more. So, the information on OHA, it goes from, if you go on the very bottom, 2003, that was the highest point. We had nitrates at 7.5. Because it was at 7.5, we had to do an additional, oh, no. I know that when you get up higher, you have to do another check, but the federal guidelines is 10. Our average from 2003 till now is 2.8. If you go and look at the last 6 years, it is up to 3.8, I believe, 3.7. So within that span of time, it hasn't even, like within a 20-year period, it hasn't even gone up a whole point. So like our water is very clean, very safe. It is very simple. So Junior, Luis, Mike, who do you guys want to add?
No, I mean, that's where we are. Says the guidelines tell us that 10 parts per million is our limit. And we've been is 7.5 and got that in 3, and I only marked the ones on here that were above 4. Those are the ones that you want to be looking at. So, yeah.
Chair, I just have a quick, is that
Yeah,
okay?
go right out, just jump in there, anybody.
Okay, in the years the 29, 29. It says rain well number 1, Columbia River. Is that different than the other testing locations?
Well, what I believe is that all the rest of them are a combination of the water, we just did separate testing, needs collector that year. I wasn't here, so
Oh, okay.
Louise would probably be going down through that.
No, they're just testing we're required to do, either for startups or just the state requires to do certain testing.
So the test location for the wells, they're different wells, or do you have just the one rainy well?
We have 3 different wells.
Okay.
They're all on the Columbia River,
Okay,
collector 1, 2, and 3.
okay. And, rainy wells aren't considered groundwater, right? Aren't they considered, surface water?
No, they're considered river.
Surface water. Mhm. Surface water is a river water, right?
But
Yeah,
it's under the river. It's really out in the middle underground, so it's not sucking straight water. It's underground.
okay.
they call
Here's
it
the
rainy
engineer, he can probably
right?
answer.
So the state characterizes the city's water as ground. The quality is such that it's characterized as groundwater, but it is the source water right. So
It's a Columbia River water, right?
Yep.
But it's characterized as a groundwater, right?
due to the water quality, it's such good water quality that it's characterized as groundwater, and that's why the city only
Okay.
has to disinfect with bleach,
Mhm.
in order for it to be potable.
I got a question. Junior, help me on this. You stepped away and when you were on the Oklahoma, just so that everybody's aware of, there's still a disconnect that's out there. Help me on this. Between OHA, which is the Clean Water Act, which is 10 parts per million. The Oklahoma, and it confuses people, is a DEQ thing, and that's 7 parts per million. Did everybody understand that? So when you're out there stirring or talking, it's 10 parts per million in drinking water.
Okay.
Not wastewater. Okay, you gotta, they're monitoring, and that's Oklahoma. It's a sewer thing, not a drinking water. Is that correct, Junior? So let's put it in a nutshell. So, like Boardman has a BOD plant. They don't have the DEQ requirement on sewer discharge like we do. Okay, we have to get the 7 parts. But clean drinking water is 10 parts. That's a federal standard. So just remember there's a disconnect there. The state has not fixed that yet between Oregon Water Resource / OHA and DEQ. So be careful. We have to follow, the standard still is by law, 10 parts per million. Oklahoma is 7, that's sewer, that's discharge.
And DEQ discharge is 7.
In the Guama. Yeah.
The level
they-
set by
they-
DEQ, the state of Oregon is 7, the federal level EPA is 10.
But that's only for sewer, DEQ.
I
That's
think it's
water
for
as well.
drinking water.
That's for the Luflama, that's a state regulation. State is 7.
So, but they haven't, OHA hasn't got there, that's the disconnect, so people need to be patient, trying to fix the state. Yes, that is correct, you gotta be careful. They're trying to fix it, and that's hence they have the agreement that the state agencies have together on their plan. It's gonna take some time to clean up their language.
Mike, any more comments on that?
Well, I like, the MCL is the important maximum contamination.
Yes.
So that's an important piece of information. And from what I recall, the 7 parts per million in drinking water is a trigger for additional testing. And so right now, the city has to test twice a year. Once a year. So if you exceeded 7 milligrams per liter in your drinking water, that triggered additional testing. 7 milligrams per liter is also a trigger at the state level for, it puts the drinking water source kind of on notice that you're reaching potential problems. But so it's kind of a threshold the state looks at that says, you're getting close to the MCL, but obviously you haven't been there, you haven't met that yet, but therefore you're triggering some additional testing.
You'll get a warning at 5, but right?
I believe it's 7, that require additional testing, and I think it's 3 months, and you have to do like that.
So on this report, and I remember listening to you speak at the city meetings, so this, the wells testing here is a shot in time, is a one-time shot. And in between these, I believe that I remember we were somewhere in the 7/8s. And it was, the draining wells were adjusted, to lower that. Is that something that still can continue to be done if they do raise? I remember there was something that some people, some groundwater, some river water, that it could have, that was adjusted. I remember this slideshow that you gave that presentation.
Methods was operationally, the city's operating the collector wells consistent. Depending on operation and maintenance of the city, I mean, sometimes they'll pull from collector well 1, sometimes 2. And now there's the 3rd one that just got fired up, so the sample point is in the water building. And so it's not necessarily a test of a specific well per se, but it's reflective of what's going out to the drinking water system. So.
The distribution source.
Yeah, so it could be a combination. If, you just follow a drop of water and once it gets mixed up, you have no idea really where it's came from, so.
And were you saying 7 or 8? There was a 7 or an 8?
Yeah, wasn't too long ago that was either out at the mobile home park, and there was a test at the city, where it tested high not at the distribution point, but test that you guys were required to do
Out in the distribution system,
in the system, yeah.
so.
And they were quite a bit higher in 7s, almost into the 8s.
I mean, really speaking, that was from
Okay, so you
For
did a
that
presentation,
information.
you did a presentation out at the city. Yeah, about 4.
Yeah, so we do our testing for nitrate at our plant right before it hits the distribution. So before it touches any consumers, we know what we're getting from our sources, from the rain wells.
But you also do testing at certain locations throughout the system.
We do, I can't think off the top of my head, but if they're required by the state, so whatever the state mandates, that's what we do.
So you're saying 4 years ago, Mike did a presentation, and in that presentation, he shared that somewhere out in the city's water, there was a nitrate level of 7 or 8. And that we then drowned it, like diluted it down.
It changed the flow somehow, the dynamics of how much came from ground. And surface.
Hey, Mike, I think what I heard, it was like, it wasn't looped, it was a dead end somewhere and it needed to be flushed more frequently. I think that's what it was. It wasn't looped. When it's looped, you don't have that. And I think looping it, there was something that
Yeah,
there was
there's
some
no loop to
looping
that.
process
It's the end
that
of
fixed
the-
it. It was a
It
dead
was at
end.
the end of the line. It was done out at the RV park and then one at the city. And
So,
it said the city
Boardman
stinks, I
fixed
believe,
it.
if I remember
And looped
correctly.
it.
And what RV park?
Driftwood is it Driftwood? That's, yeah. Farthest one out. Off there.
I honestly, I mean, I remember the presentation, but that was 4 years ago.
Okay,
I'm not gonna.
I'm just
I'm not gonna
wondering,
try
you
and
know, if
Recollect on something 4 years ago. I'm an engineer, so I wanna be
right,
accurate in what I say, so I'm not gonna speculate on.
Yeah.
what
And I
was said.
think, that's what we're bringing this up. So like the numbers are the numbers right before you, those are the numbers. So what we're reporting to the state, what the state requirements are, these are the numbers right there.
so do you guys test every day or do you test every day?
We test certain things every day, quarterly, yearly, every 6 years, 9
But
years.
you only report once a year to,
I think you're specifically asking about metrics.
I don't
well,
think so, once a year,
once a year.
once a year.
Can I just clarify? So this is pre-treatment or post-treatment test?
The nitrate,
The test
it's after treatment.
after treatment, okay. Do you take tests pre-treatment?
If the state requires, yes, there's so many tests we
Yeah.
do hundreds a year, every
Mhm.
2 years, so I can't recollect every test we do.
Sure. But these numbers are post-treatment.
They don't treat for, you don't treat for nitrates, so.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, okay.
They-
We don't, we just treat,
Did they
just
just-
put chlorine, put sodium hypochlorite into the system.
Okay,
We don't treat it for nitrate.
okay.
Sorry for all the questions, but this is really important because it will probably be the water source. When's the last time you tested out a driftwood that you know of?
For nitrates, we did when that whole nitrate thing was going on, we did test several areas, probably like 2 years ago. Rick, was that when we were doing testing for the community when I think it was like 2 years ago where we went out, but besides that, we do just our treatment plants.
Okay. And we had ones for a long time until like 2019, but also that's about when you were adding Rainy Well 2. So is it possible, are you blending those two Rainy Wells together and it's Rainy Well 2 higher than Rainy Well 1?
So Rainy Well 1 came online in 2002. And I don't want to get into such a long drawn out story, but there was a period of time where Rainy 2 was not in service, and that was related to particulates and the capacity of which the well was pumped. It was 10,000 gallons a minute, but the city did microscopic particulate analysis and worked with OHA to lower the yield of collector well 2 to 6,000 ppm. And more particulate tests were taken, and it was determined at that time that that was the most that well could be pumped, was 6,000 ppm. And so there was a period of time, I think it was 4 years or so, that all those testing occurred. And I'm not, don't quote me, but I want to say probably around 2006 or 7 is when Rainy 2 came into service full time. And so the way those operated, it alternates between use for, during normal demand periods, could be collector 1, it could be collector 2, but during higher demand periods, it's both collectors. And so that's why the collection or sample point is at the water booster pump station. And that's representative of the water that's going out in the distribution system.
And then adding collector 3 just will add another point to mix with them.
And when did collector 3 come on?
February 24th, 28th of this year.
Oh, nice, okay.
And again, we'll be able to track those and just follow, go to the OHA website, do the same thing, be able to pull it up, see the data. So the main thing is it is not hidden. There's no subversion tactics that the city goes through. It really is just, we have to go report it. This is what the state requires. There's all sorts. When you go click on this, the analytes, right? You can click on nitrates, nitrites. I mean, it has a whole list of things that you can pull up. And the more that we can get that out in the public, instead of maybe misleading information, that is better. I mean, it's not I think sometimes, especially in the society we're in, I think scare tactics seems to be the way, oh my heck, let's get everyone nervous and scared. That's not the point. We just need to say, hey, here's the information. These are the facts. This is what we have going on. So really, nothing to hide. I mean, we will get you as much information as you need.
Well, and our goal is to make sure that we can get safe drinking water.
Oh, correct. Yep.
That's what we need.
And again, I can't emphasize, our water system is so simplistic. We are a level 1. There's no levels. Unless you turn things off. the river. Maybe that's what it's doing. Okay,
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else or any questions from the advisory or board members? You want to say thank you for coming in. I know a couple of you are interested in the town hall, so we'll, if you want to excuse, that's fine.
awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna leave these here just to be able to hand out.
Good idea. Next up, we're going to do, roadmap project discussion. Jeff and I, Ronan, you're up.
Yeah.
Hello,
So,
am I on?
Yes, you're on, Ronan.
All right, I have a PowerPoint to share. I think I'm allowed to share. Is that okay?
Yes.
You guys see that?
Mhm.
All right. I'll take maybe 50 minutes or so to kind of go over the sort of update of the roadmap, drinking water roadmap project. We did just do a steering committee meeting for the project a couple of weeks ago on the 29th. So if some of you folks, I think, were at that meeting, so you'll see some familiar slides, but I'm gonna kind of err on the side of kind of a higher level update and kind of context, assuming that several, maybe most folks have been tracking the roadmap project at least for a little bit. And if there's questions and more detail that needs to be answered or follow up on, I can do that. But I'll just, for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of go a higher level, and then we can dig in and ask questions as I go. That's okay. All right. So just real quick, many of you folks know this roadmap project was a project that Morrow County secured through a EPA research grant award through a congressional directed spending process. And so the county secured that a couple of years ago and partnered with Umatilla County on the project. And really the focus of it was to develop an approach, an assessment of how existing public water systems can be used to connect rural domestic well users that have been impacted by nitrates. So the focus really was around connecting public water systems, but kind of knowing that there's going to be a lot of constraints around that. The approach and the scope of work looks at other non-connection alternatives. So that's kind of, again, I'll mention this a couple of times. The focus is on connection options with looking at non-connection as well. And as part of that, so the overall scope, it's, besides the feasibility and engineering around the connection concepts, working towards understanding what the nitrate contamination is, because that feeds into that assessment. And then it also includes engaging and educating domestic well users in the community as part of that process. The schedule is about a couple years. It's a 2-year project. We started in the spring of 24. It's going to go through middle of 2026. We broke it out into basically 4 stages, just to try to streamline as much as we can, but also try to find some early opportunities and kind of focus the effort as we went through the process. So the first stage was really compiling all the information. There's been a lot of data collected, and so developing work plans, developing a QAP, and prioritizing sampling the wells that are out there. Stage 2, which we're in, and I'll get to a little bit more detail on that, is looking at the water system connection options in particular. And then stage 3 is looking at the non-connection options. And then stage 4 is kind of broken up into, developing the actual action plan and kind of next steps in the process. Because this is technically a research project. It's not an engineering project. So we're looking at feasibility of options and opportunities for moving any of these options forward. Kind of geared towards really what the Clean Water Consortium structure is, where you guys are looking to implement projects that get identified. Kind of set up that way with this roadmap project. Real quick, just a little bit more detail on stage 1. So again, we started this back in the late spring of 2024, kind of wrapped up stage 1. late fall of 2024. And again, we were developing work plans for communications, collecting the data management plan. There's a lot of data obviously collected by multiple agencies. And so a lot of the effort was getting all that data pulled together, developing a database so we could manage that data, and then developing a quality assurance project plan for the sampling that we were going to conduct. And then just kind of setting up the options and communicating that with the stakeholders and the public and the counties. So that wrapped up in the fall of last year. And then we moved into stage 2, which we're in kind of the tail end of stage 2 now. We started in the fall. Once we had that QAP that was approved by EPA, went out and collected some samples from target wells that we identified in specific areas. I'll get into that in a little bit. So that was in November of 2024. We collected our first set of samples, and really the sampling was geared towards confirming the sort of the data quality from the data that was collected primarily with the OHA and well safety program that was happening over the last year and a half prior to us starting. So just seeing what that data looked like compared to the data that we were collecting, just to confirm that. We did some workshops, refined and focused on understanding the connection concept. So that was a lot of the effort here in the start of 25 through the last couple of months. As I mentioned, we had that steering committee meeting where we presented that information to the steering committee in the last month, end of May. And then we're getting ready to do a public meeting actually at the end of June. So I'll get to that again. I'll mention that again at the end. An important sort of part of the way we approached the roadmap project is to identify these focus areas. You may have heard of that. We've been communicating the project really in the context of these focus areas. So we've identified 16 of these areas throughout the Lubguama. And really it's, we went this approach because, the Lubguama is a large area. I think it's 500 square miles. There's a lot of diversity in the conditions and the characterization of those areas. And so we wanted to kind of identify these areas that we can do some assessment and try to see if there's common issues and things that we can apply in terms of developing action plans. So the focus areas address those diverse conditions, see if we can identify some early opportunities, kind of like, again, with the consortium approach, and then seeing if there's any funding opportunities that we can flag early on as we go through the process, knowing that there's going to be further assessments and things that are going to have to happen after the roadmap project is done. These are kind of just the drinking water options that we're looking at. I think you're mostly familiar with these. Again, we're looking primarily on the connection options, so connecting the existing public water systems and whether there's additional treatment that might be needed. We're also looking at, again, under the stage 3 part that's upcoming, looking at improvements to existing wells or deepening wells, adding treatment to new wells, and then point of use treatment. So we're looking at these range of options as part of this roadmap project. This is another map, kind of a little bit easier to see the focus areas that we identified, and also shows their proximity or sort of relation to the public water systems in the study area, the Lubguama. So we've got Boardman, Irrigan, Umatilla, and Hermiston. We're part of this discussion with a consortium, obviously focused on the Morrow County areas, but with these areas that are with stage 2, focused on the connection options, we're really interested. We were focused on these area 2, 3, area 5, 6, and then this 10, 11, 12 cluster around the cities, to seeing how the extension of these public water systems can be used to serve those areas. So that's where we went through a target well. We reviewed the target well data or well data and identified some target wells for the sampling, confirmation sampling in those areas. We also did this last couple months, starting in April, we did a survey. We distributed a survey led by Consortium to kind of get a gauge for where the residents, the well owners, were in relation to the types of drinking water options that we were looking at, concerns, things like that. And so I'll get into that here next, just to kind of review some of those findings from that survey. So again, the survey was distributed primarily around those areas near the cities. We got pretty good response from the surveys. I think there were probably 700 or 800 addresses that were mailed out with the surveys, and it was also available to respond digitally. So it was available on a website that folks can just access and respond to. But most of the respondents, I think we had a little over 100 responses of the 700 or 800 that, mailings that went out. It's a decent return on a survey like that. 87% of them belong to single households. A majority of them had pretty good familiarity with the nitrate issues. So it's either somewhat familiar or very familiar. You can see in that graph at the bottom here. And then another thing that was interesting was that the information where they, reliable information was really from the county health departments as a primary source of information that the respondents were sort of getting that information from. An interesting finding also here, this is, we listed the range of different drinking water options and where the preferences were. And you can see a majority of the respondents showed installing a water home treatment or bottled drinking water had the highest sort of percentages around there. You can see connection to city or community water at 18%, new well or community water system at 13%. So, some of this is, I think, where an education piece really is highlighted here. Folks are familiar with the home treatment. It's being, implemented by OHA, bottled water as well. And there's a lot of sort of questions, I would say, and concerns around this connection to city and using community water for the drinking water solution. Here's just a couple other highlights on the survey. Again, health departments were the sort of most trusted sources of information. Cost was the leading concern, regardless of what solution folks prioritize or preferred. Cost was the kind of the leading concern for any of those. There was a strong desire for independence from city systems. Community meetings, so kind of geared towards how we share information and inform folks. Community meetings were ranked low, interestingly, for engagement. Again, a lot of the information folks were getting it from the health departments. And then shared systems and ownership were other concerns based on the responses. All right, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit. So that was the survey. The other kind of main effort that's been going on the last couple of months in stage 2 work was working directly with the 4 cities in the area. So that includes Boardman and Irion here in the Morrow County area, working with their city staff and their water system folks to really ground truth the concepts, the connection concepts that we were looking at. HDR Engineering were the firm that on our team that was leading this effort. So they conducted some one-on-one workshops with the cities to ground truth some of their thoughts and concepts on the connection. But these are kind of the highlights of the common issues that were raised by the cities in going through that process. We talked about cost concerns from the residents and the well owners. There was kind of similar concerns on the financial side from the city systems. One being affordability for the new customers that are going to be brought in. These are low density areas with a significant amount of infrastructure that needs to be put in place. So affordability was a big concern, and then having some equity between folks that they're already serving within their system and then the new customers that are going to be brought in. The other one was just, that's kind of the capital cost side of things, but there's also long-term maintenance concerns in terms of, again, low density and amount of maintenance that needs to happen for these relatively large expansion of their system. Folks brought up the governance in terms of whether it's a city or a special district that would be operating these. And then a common concern as well was the annexation, sort of constraints on the future development in these areas. Again, if you're serving water in these areas, there's some constraint potentially on being able to sort of further develop and increase the densities in these areas that you're providing water to. Some of the other issues is, how does road and sewer infrastructure play into extending these water systems? Is it part of the same effort? Is it delayed? Ideally, you're able to put all that infrastructure in at once. And so timing and sequencing of the non-drinking water infrastructure is also a consideration. How does irrigation needs and demands get served? Funding, obviously, and then getting information from the public and feedback, which part of the survey gets to some of that, but there's going to need to be a lot more of that from a sort of on the ground effort with each area specifically. There's going to be differences, obviously, in the way folks see that, depending on which area you're at. And then water rights, any existing water rights, how are those addressed as those areas are served by the extended systems? I'm not going to go into detail here, but I have a couple of slides that show kind of the concepts that HDR developed for the different areas. So this is the Boardman system. I think most of you guys are aware that there's the West Glen area that there's a separate feasibility study that's being developed separate from the effort that HDR did, but their look was a larger, kind of larger effort incorporating this Eastergard area that what we were calling our focus area 3. This was our focus area 2. And so it's a larger system that they were looking at. And you'll see the difference in sort of the cost. But their approach, their concept development included looking at not doing a full hydraulic model, but they were looking at, pressures, pressure needs based on elevations. They were looking at, is there storage requirements that are needed or booster pumping? And so their concepts includes those things. You can kind of see here, there's a concept for a water tank and pump stations as part of the system, as you get a fairly extensive distribution system that goes beyond, significantly beyond the Boardman water system. So they did that development. They looked at pipe sizing, number of households that needed to be served. And so, yeah, that's just the snapshot there of the Boardman concept that HDR developed. Similarly for Irrigan, with Irrigan, there's potentially the interest to serve areas further out, longer term. So there were some phasing discussions with the city. The area here that HDR developed is just for kind of this first phase sort of concept, and so doesn't go as far south as that potentially might be served longer term. And then I have the Umatilla and Hermiston maps here as well. I know that's not necessarily an interest for the consortium since it's in Umatilla County, but there it is. The HDR developed concepts for those areas as well. And then just some costs. Again, these are preliminary, kind of very high level, feasibility level, planning level cost estimates. You can see here on the Boardman system, upwards of almost $30 million when you look at the full distribution system, water mains, residential services, water tank, booster station. Irrigan's a little bit smaller system in terms of area. It was interesting, the number of the areas were quite a bit different, but the number of services, estimated services, was similar amongst the 4 areas they were looking at. Anywhere from like 250 to 300, I think, services they were estimating just based on a aerial photo, kind of aerial image, residential count. Here's the Umatilla Hermiston cost, again, kind of in that similar ballpark, upwards of 30 million for Hermiston. It's a much, much larger area that they were looking at for Hermiston. It's much more spread out in the areas that they developed the concept for. So those are just, initial concepts. There's the stage 3 and 4 work that's going to be upcoming. So we are going to be looking at what these connection options look like relative to non-connection alternatives. We've got other focus areas, if you recall the map that's showing the focus areas that are not near cities. So we're looking at non-connection alternatives as a starting point for those areas, but we'll also be looking at what does non-connection look like for these areas near the cities, areas that might be a little bit further out, or maybe there might be a cutoff of where it makes sense to extend the system, but maybe further out it doesn't. So we'll be looking at non-connection for these areas as well. We're looking at a little more closer look at the financials and funding. And then starting to talk a little bit more with with the cities and stakeholders about some of the issues that were identified. And then continuing that outreach and education piece. Ultimately, depending on what areas make sense as we look at the non-connection alternatives, the action plan piece, kind of that last year of the last, I guess, quarter of our project schedule, we're looking at seeing if we can develop the targeted designs on furthering the design of concept for a little bit more for some areas. It won't be all the areas. We'll have to identify which ones to prioritize as we get into that stage 4. And then just immediate near term, again, I mentioned that we have a public meeting scheduled for end of June. So June 26th, we've got that scheduled. It's going to be held at Umatilla City Hall, I believe. We've got some invitations and a little bit of promotion material for that. So that's in 2.5 weeks or so. And we're producing, HDR's producing the connection concept summary. So that'll be rolling out probably in July, shortly after that public meeting update. And then we'll be moving into stage 3 and into the fall and winter in the rest of 2025, where we'll look more closely at those non-connection options. So if there's, I think that's all I have. If there's questions I can add, but that we will have this public meeting in a couple of weeks, and I guess I'll kind of leave it there.
Questions? You got the engineer here.
Hey, Rona, this is Aaron. Mike, a question, this is just for the committee. I know there's probably some consternation, we know that from people that are out of the county, and we know that cost effectiveness of when you go out, my well's fine, it's bad, you know, all of that fun stuff. So Ronan, when you look at, and committee probably needs to look at this, if it comes to that point or where they're outliers, but your analysis looks at doing something, whatever that is, it's gonna have to be funded not with federal money or state money. We've been down that road. Can't go there, right? But what's that cost going to be? And I think it's for the committee to look at, as an example, reverse osmosis, and then what's the cost to maintain it? I think in the public would need to be aware of that. If you're out, like around here again, we haven't went out, it'd be nice, even though Barb says she's got a great well. Wagon Wheel doesn't have good stuff there, but you do. She's farther south than that. But what about those people that we can't get to, but the consortium wants to look at? We're not analyzing that, and I would say, and I'd recommend it, somewhere, Ronan, in your great data, we're going down the road to either look at a special district or hook to a public system. But what about the outliers? The bottom line is to get clean drinking water to everybody in the area. But what do? What's that gonna cost? How are you gonna get there? If somebody says, I want to reverse osmosis, I think they need to know upfront, full disclosure, you're gonna own it. We get it for you. Here's what it's gonna cost to maintain it. I think that's prudent, and I think that's right to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's we're transitioning over to that stage 3 that I pointed out, and that's where we're really going to be looking at that. You know, we wanted to take first pass, mostly because the funding was geared towards looking at that connection option, right? But we knew going in that it wasn't going to be the solution for everyone, knowing that the area is so large, the proximity to existing public water systems, as you pointed out. There's a lot of areas that are not anywhere near systems, and it doesn't make sense to extend a water system out that far. And so, yeah, for those really remote, sort of isolated areas, and you think back to the focus area map that we had, we try to identify areas like that as sort of our pilot approach of when we look at the non-connection options, we're going to look at the non-connection, whether that's putting in point of use treatment or a community well that, you know, maybe serves I guess a shared well that serves a few households or something like that. And then coming up with more of those life cycle kind of costs that I think you're talking about, Aaron, where you're looking at, what does it cost over a 30-year window to maintain and use a point of use treatment or a shared well with treatment? What does that look like compared to connection option? If it's if you want to compare, if it's in an area that's sort of, maybe you could extend it, maybe you can't, but having that ability to compare those costs, that's going to be happening in our stage 3 work.
I got a question, Ron. Is the deciding factor on, say, reverse osmosis or community well or rehabbing a well, is it solely the cost factor we're talking about that would determine which way you might go on that? Because I've heard it said that the government grants will not cover it. But I believe there might be some other money that out there. I've talked to some, that you might be surprised that some people, I don't know, maybe not. That though there may be money for those options that government grants do not cover. So I'm just wondering if you develop your cost analysis, are you writing off the government grant for outlier areas?
Yeah, part of when we look at and this is going to probably roll more into stage 4, but once we have a handle on a better understanding of what the connection concepts look like, costs, sort of constraints for implementing, concerns from the residents, and then similarly on the non-connection options, I think we have to look at, it's not just a cost thing, right? It's going to be a consideration of what is the sort of acceptability from the residents of any one of these options? What are the funding opportunities for a given option in that area? It's going to be a combination of all of that. And, one of the, I think this information was routed already, the work that Willamette Partnership was doing specifically around West Glen. They had kind of these 4 sort of broad criteria, and one of them being sort of this comprehensive approach, right? Is that it sort of depends a little bit on how some of those factors, like, is it a comprehensive approach? How affordable is it? Is it sort of acceptable by the residents? Is it permittable? I mean, one of the main concerns with the new well is we're not sure really a pathway to securing a water right for that area, right? So that we can get around that with water resources, that's could be a significant constraint for that option in anywhere in the Guama. But it'll have to be all of those factors. We're not going to be just looking at affordability as kind of the driving factor. So I don't know if that answers your questions or gets to the
Very
question.
well. Anything else for Ronan?
So Ronan, so right now it's the connection options right now. How long does phase 3 go? To provide us non-connection options?
We're getting ready to, once we get through this public meeting in June, we're going to transition to stage 3. I mean, there'll be some sort of back work going on the connection options, but we'll be starting the non-connection look probably right after the public meeting. And then that will carry us through the fall to the end of 2025. So we'll have the non-connection option evaluation kind of wrapping up at the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Ronan. We really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Right. Next up is our consultant selection, engineering and grant writing. It's Matt.
Yes. So one of the things is, I mean, Ronan's here, he was more presenting on the Guama site, but we've had, we need to get a engineer consultant and a grant writing consultant. Two individuals or firms that we've been dealing with both on the Guama and with the county is GSI Water Solutions and Dakota Consulting. Several of the things with this, with our Clean Water Consortium is, we don't have like spending levels or procurement document or policy set up at this point, so we kind of default to the state ones. We're asking just for direction from the board about, an engineering consultant or a grant writing consultant. The state requirements show that these consulting services can be covered under personnel services, which we can award without going up to an RFP if the contract is $25,000 or less. For a single year item, I think that would be doable for these two firms as we go through, get them set up and take care of if we wanted just to more or less sole source or award those directly. Otherwise, if we wanted to put it out to an RFP, which is, a transparent possibility and could allow us to go beyond its $25,000 threshold, we could get that RFP set up, posted over the next 3 weeks, and a review of that, and might not be able to hit for the next meeting in July, but shortly after we could get something together. So looking at for input from the board on if we wanted just to secure contracts with Dakota Consulting and GSI Water Solutions for the first year, or if you would prefer to have us put out an RFP and secure contractors for those services through an open bid kind of process.
I was kind of thinking that we already did the grant writing. Didn't we already, okay,
So the only contract that we've done is the legal services. Grant writing, we've kind of, we've worked with the lobbyist here for the legislative capital construction request we did. But it's not really a grant, it's just the application. So more robust grants, EPA, EQ, other things, that's what we're looking for this grant writing specialist to help with.
We'll do it. I mean, the port will continue to do everything we can on the state and federal side for
Lobbying and
any of those grants. Well, even, I mean, finding the funding sources, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't use someone like me to go out and formally look and pursue those if possible. But, and we're happy to continue at the level we are.
That's general. So. Yeah, Chair, our finance liaison, are you comfortable with doing sole sourcing without an RFP, the 25K?
I think that's a board decision.
But it falls under Oregon procurement. Okay. I wasn't doubting you, Matt. I just
No.
wanted to get.
He was the one who pointed me in that direction.
Okay, perfect, okay. It's more expedient for sure, and I mean, I personally have several years' experience with both Ronan and GSI and Nick Dakota, and they both know how to work within the county system, and I don't know any other engineering firm that knows as much about water quality. I mean, Anderson Perry does a lot of municipal water quality stuff, but not the same sort of research. Is that something Anderson Perry would be interested in?
I think GSI has more, it's clear they have way more experience with hydrogeology.
Yeah.
And that's more so the focus here, so.
is $25,000 enough?
For the grant writing, I think we're very comfortable with that. For the engineering consulting, if we're looking about going into designs and everything like that, I would say no. If we're looking at feasibility and looking at things and pointing us in the right direction, interesting enough, we kind of dovetail off of what the CDS work is being done. And so we would just have them look and verify some of the other things. If we were gonna look into technical kind of development, that might be where we put it out a quick RFP, have them do some, develop the scope, and then we put that out for development, because in that case, we'll be putting in infrastructure that an Anderson Perry or someone would be more interested in applying for.
And just to add off it, and Aaron and Mike and Lisa. And maybe Kelly know this, a lot of times if you have a project and you're looking for funding sources, you do a one-stop. You can build in part of that engineering design that would be part of a specific project. And I think, Chair, if what we're looking for is more of a engineer of record to help us navigate, to get us to that next step to identify some specific projects, so GSI might be the ticket, and when we get to specific one-off projects for the outliers, the non-public water system connection options, but then maybe that's where individual RFPs for individual projects might come in order.
I agree with that. I think. I think they kind of work together,
Mhm.
and people in this room are familiar with them.
Mhm.
For myself, I think it would be good to stick with them. Whether or not, like Kelly says, is it enough?
Mhm.
Is in my mind, and Lisa, Carol, you're more familiar with this, you got more grants and all this put together, probably, is it is a GSI that gives Nick the meat to go for the grants, is that how it works or not?
I'd
When
say
I
it's
say
sort of,
meat, I mean,
yeah.
enough
Mhm.
specifics to apply.
Yeah, it's really an iterative process in my experience, so we're lucky that I think organizing this group before this GSI work is complete, a year from now-ish, a year from August, is really good. And then it becomes, I think we'll have some policy decisions as a board and as the two bodies, the port and the county. And then you pick a project and you need to look into it maybe a 1% or 10% level design to get a ballpark figure and then decide which projects are really even feasible worth pursuing. And Nick, particularly with federal grants and state grants, can, he's just said some grants will require a separate RFP process to spend grant funds on large engineering design projects. So again, it's more project specific, but iterative. Would it be good to have Nick chat a little bit about his experience about how these work? Okay, no,
At this point, let's just have a discussion on with the board. That's okay.
okay, sure.
Oh, well, I want to ask one thing that is, would it be helpful, since there is a question on the amount? Since Roman listened to what we were saying, would it be helpful to give him a little bit of time to think about? To make, what he thinks it might, a contract might cost, not a specific amount, but maybe just 25 enough. Would it be helpful to get his input? Because we're kind of just taking a guess, because that's our limit, right?
Is it the limit? It is,
Without
okay.
doing RFP, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then that bring it back, we'd have to come back, you'd have to do an RFP at that point.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, I guess I would
Kind of
just
void, right?
point out that it's not, there's a tendency sometimes to extend, but you can't do that. If you do a direct award for $25,000, there's no extension. You have to do an RFP if you want to continue that work.
Okay. Then better just leave that discussion more set then, right?
Is that for any personal services contract?
So it's subject to the Oregon model rules since the board hasn't adopted anything.
But you can exceed that.
Counties are different, Lisa, than you and I are a city, so.
You probably
Yeah,
have something in your charter that,
Huh?
you probably have something in your charter that allows.
No, I think the port did, we adopted our own.
Yeah.
Contract rules, so, and I believe the port did too, and so did Boardman, I know that, so they can go out on a professional service.
And the county did as well, yeah.
But they stay with state law, right? So it's 25?
we can direct award personal services contracts.
Exceeding 25.
Mhm.
Yeah, so.
So then why couldn't,
We've adopted a procurement policy that allows us to do that. The state procurement policy doesn't.
so then why can't the PWC?
We could, but we don't have a policy right now. Right?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the policy in place. Do we need these right directly, or can we get the policy in place in time to?
I think that's a good question. Yeah.
We have been engaging with Ronan and Nick. But specifically on CDX grant, which is under the auspices of Morrow County. Our hope is if we can get that, then we make Clean Water Consortium or another entity as a sub-recipient. So it gets it into the Clean Water Consortium's pocket, that where it was awarded to Morrow County, we have to proceed with that. So we're paying them under Morrow County's umbrella now for consulting on that. And, you know, with the Guama, that's under a different bucket. So we haven't really engaged them yet, specifically under clean water, but I imagine we're going to be in the near future. Now, is that tomorrow? Could we come back with a sample, procurement policy, in July and adopt that and then award it without going to RFP? Or we could just go to RFP and see who comes in. So we got a couple different options of.
I'd like to hear from the citizens, just because that's something that citizens should be involved in do you think we should go out? Or should, we've used these other people and we're looking in-house, but should we go outside in the citizens' view?
I think you should go with whoever's most qualified and you're comfortable with. And if GSI has been working within the county for years, I mean, I remember there being from projects that we have done, so it was a company that I would trust. So.
Well, I agree. I also think that if they're the most comfortable and knowledgeable of our area, that we should pay them the money that we think is right for that, instead of maybe paying somebody less who isn't as knowledgeable.
They've already done a lot of the groundwork just because they've been in the area for so long. So you're gonna pay possibly less to them because they've got a lot of that information already on there.
I think I'd like to see us adopt our policy, and then we have the option of doing either one.
And allowing a little bit more flexibility on
Yeah.
behalf of the.
Yeah, so we're not restricted to 25,000, we just write our own policy. How long does that take, Matt?
Well, since it sounds like we've got a couple that we could pull from very easily that have a little more lenient standards than ours, I mean, we could have a draft sample fairly quickly.
Ready for next meeting, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just,
Was there another question?
I was just gonna offer that, I like that idea. I think having those policies in place work. I always think it's safer to do an RFP, and then there's no question about whether or not nobody questions it, and then you don't really necessarily have a ceiling. I mean, it depends what you write into the RFP, and that doesn't take really all that long. And that, I mean, very likely these two firms will submit a proposal and have an advantage because of their knowledge, but and we have a really good procurement officer now working under Kevin, unless someone else was to do the procurement.
Yeah.
That might fall on you, Matt. And you know, we could turn that around in 6 weeks or so. Publish it, look at the proposals and select someone and have a ceiling on that that's a lot higher than 25,000. And that way we're not constrained to that. And maybe at the same time, on a little bit slower track, we work on procurement policies. Because we're gonna have a lot of procurement probably over the course of delivering water to many sources. 25,000 doesn't go very far with an engineering firm. You earned your keep, Mike, nothing, but that's not very much money, is it?
Well, I think you might know better than me, but like ORS 279, I think you can hire professional services
Yeah.
up to 100,000.
For cities. We're,
For cities.
we're an IGA, we're
Okay,
this
yeah.
federal government.
Yeah.
So
That's where we get.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
But no, I mean, GSI will issue and they're doing all the legwork.
Why don't we come
I-
back with our procurement policies? Yeah.
I would expect that.
Sorry, motion, yeah.
Is that a-
I guess I would say, there are, given GSI's work specific, I mean, there's certainly criteria if the board wanted to do a sole source award, and make that determination, and that's another route where you don't have to worry about an RFP either. I think they certainly qualify given their intimate knowledge of the water issues in the Loquama. And that would put them at a significant advantage from a value perspective because they don't have to relearn it.
I agree with that.
Lisa, you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion that, we each go back to our respective, policies. Provide those to the board as a sample for us to adopt. And consider, a sole source personal services contract with GSI
For the next,
for the next meeting, sure.
for the deadline.
You want to add
So-
the GSI and the other?
GSI and Kush.
So we each go back to our own, but that's still
We're
work to be
bringing
done.
we're bringing samples back to the board.
And share them with Matt in advance of the next meeting, is that?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah.
We can do that tomorrow.
And then have Matt bring his own.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand the emotion, so I think maybe I wasn't listening carefully enough, but
If we could maybe simplify it, saying, a motion to, direct staff to develop a procurement policy for the Clean Water Consortium.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then a motion to, approve sole source determination for GSI and, Dakota. Yeah, I can't remember his last name.
Nick.
Nick Dakota, but he has a
Cody
company.
Consulting.
Dakota Consulting. I wanted to say the Dakota Group, but
I would second that.
You got that, Valerie?
Not really.
Lisa's okay.
So should there be two separate motions, one to pursue a procurement policy at our next meeting, full stop? And then the next piece is a separate action.
probably make it cleaner.
Motion one, what you got on?
Motion to direct staff to develop a policy for procurement and present that at the next meeting.
I would second that.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor?
Who?
Aye.
All opposed?
And
These,
Okay.
And don't you want that?
Oh, further discussion, I'm sorry. Was there further
no,
discussion?
Lisa was.
Well,
Lisa did.
Oh.
It was Lisa's motion.
Did we do that correctly?
I think so.
Yeah, she.
Yeah. We're good.
So now the second part is,
Second motion, Valerie.
That's the part I didn't get written down.
Let's take a stab at that.
well, if we're doing the first piece first, we don't really need to do the second piece.
I think that's right, yeah, yeah, and so maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after, we could adopt that policy, and then depending on what we adopt, the outcome would be there, so.
sounds good.
Okay.
Does that work? Does that make sense? Oh, yeah.
Now, we done
We're
with
still
that?
getting it,
Yes.
where we wanna go, we're just being transparent about it.
Okay, you don't need a second motion.
All in favor?
not
Right,
having
you
a
might
second
end up
motion.
sharing this right
now. Just ignore them.
You have a motion to go on?
There we go.
If I say so.
I don't know, did you vote?
We voted on motion one,
Oh, we did.
but then we started to discuss whether we needed a motion two.
Okay.
I don't think we need.
And consensus is no, correct? Okay, Matt, was anything else on the consultant selection?
No.
Nope. Okay, we're up to, budget policy consideration.
Okay, this is a continuation of the discussion from last meeting about language on the for budget policy. As we look at this, I wanted to pull the information that we have for that was originally in the IGA language, which was a very loose construction on that, and then kind of the very structured language that was offered in the bylaws. During the discussion and reviewing minutes, there was a lot of discussion of let's have the most, you know, by the ORS kind of thing. And then there's the other thing saying we aren't bound to that. Let's keep it loose and open. And then it was the question of who all is on the budget committee if we are to have one of those. And so I just want to redress and specifically focus on this because in our discussion before, it was all the bylaws. And so we needed to just get this so I can get working on a budget for y'all and know how to do that. So there's other entities in our county that operate and they just have the board operate also as the budget committee. They have a meeting, they just give notice and they pass the budget. The bylaws language that Eileen had presented presents requirements of notice, which and quite honestly, with this group, we would still have notice. We would still give, you know, adequate notice to the public knowing about what it is and publish that budget. So it's public knowledge. That's a commitment that I would have as managing director on that. However, just the question of do we need residents from areas that could be used in the Laguama? Or do we just incorporate a certain number of the advisory committee to be voting members? Or do we just have the board be the voting members, kind of like as we're operating right now? If I can get direction on that, we can look to see what we can do. Please.
I would like to propose that we go with option 1 with a modification that says the managing director will prepare, develop, and recommend consortium's annual operating budget, for the board and advisory committee's review and approval.
So the budget committee, the advisory committee are voting members effectively. Yes. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Did you have that? I mean, it,
Let me get to the right page for you.
Okay, so we'll go into the business section and any further discussion.
I got a question. Matt, you mentioned the two sides, there's one following the ORS and then doing whatever. And I think Lisa, what made is option 1, which is whatever. Because if you follow ORS, I'm gonna put a hard stop and say, you got problems, you know, you follow ORS, you gotta have it adopted by the end of June. And
There is a.
so I would say, follow your other lead and go the other way so that you're not.
We have a certain grace period in the first year that we're adopted, but after that, it's hard and fast. You're right.
Hard, and I would say because you are an IGA, it's similar to probably Lisa, right? Similar to the CDA kind of process. I'd say give you more flexibility because you are not quote unquote the government organization.
I don't think it says anywhere on there, the ORS.
It doesn't, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So I just wanted
And
to
then
make sure.
option 2 does.
So,
Option 1 is not.
So option 1 is you're looking for flexibility. That's my understanding. Okay.
And I, you know, whether it's posted in here or not, you know, the notices, I would still do that 8 to 14 days, you know, because I want people to know. And if we have the budget, and I mean, this is gonna be a public enough thing, and we wanna make that available to the public so they know before we have that meeting.
Any further discussion? Everybody got the motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Okay,
That's the easy button. Good. Thank you.
You spent an hour talking about those.
there's just one part to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, other business updates on the SCP funding?
So on this would just be,
Honestly, I have no updates other than what I reported last time I did, pull the document again, that we executed with DEQ to go to OHA agreement. And it is 50% of the $1.933 million to pay for services that address treatment, maintenance, potable water provisioning and testing according to sections of the agreement, and 581,640 from the new agreement that we entered into.
Can you send that to Matt so he could send that out, Lisa?
Yes,
thank you.
yes, I can. We're spending money. Shall be provided to Morrow County or the City of Boardman to assist with payment for the extension or development of a public drinking water system for residents that rely on private domestic wells, unless using funds for this purpose would be inconsistent with the other requirements of the agreement.
So about 1.5 million.
Yes.
And Lisa, that can be used on outliers, jelly wells,
Yes.
singles.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that we understand that that money could be done for the outliers where the other money could. And that's actually in part of the the first SVP was drilling down deeper was part of their ask. So the SVP.
I think that's one of the things the budget committee should be really cognizant of when we go into this is make sure we spend our discretionary money where it gets the most,
Uh-huh,
you know,
yeah.
don't spend discretionary money for government grant, if possible, you know. Just keep an eye on what's in it, just something to throw out there.
Because Kelly's earlier point is correct, federal funds, you cannot use federal funds for individual properties. So we may, if, we probably need to keep these funding sources and opportunities and constraints separated, you know, identified.
We probably ought to reach out to OHA, DEQ, EPA, any water resources, any water related agency, state and federal, to find out what opportunities they have outside of those.
For funding water projects?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the roadmap project will include some of those, and then Nick or whomever is our grant writer of record. Gosh, did we start assembling that information? I have a binder that looks like this, but Nick's pretty focused in on water and water infrastructure projects and grant opportunities there. That's a good idea. There's, you know, there's the all kinds of clean drinking water, revolving loan fund, all kinds of things. But most of those are for public systems.
Is there funding for engineering? I mean, would we be wasting our discretionary money on the engineering project and the other project where we could probably find a grant to do that engineering project?
Erin, you have a lot of experience with this, but oftentimes you identify the project and then you get, you spend a little bit of money on initial scoping, and Mike, you can do this too. And so a lot of times the package will include like half or 80% of the engineering design.
It really depends on what you wanna do. I think there's so many different options that we're talking about as far as scoping and feasibility and design and the size of the design. It's really case specific. And so because there are different options here with like the non-source connection, I think that's what they called it. Non-point connection. there's a big difference between those construction costs and then the construction costs between connecting to a public water system. And so it's,
So here's an example, because, you know, Mike and I connect with cities, but for like, you know, as an engineer for cities, they're gonna give a SAL, a statement of work. They've got their costs hidden in other places, they're gonna make it up. But for you all, that's where you would need Nick. It's gonna cost somebody to pull things together, to tee it up, so then somebody like Ronan, an engineer, is gonna come. It's gonna cost. Somebody's not gonna do pro bono to give you a statement of work. Engineers of record that are already there, they're gonna do stuff unless you go out for an RFP and said, I want a statement of work. But you gotta pay somebody, unless you're gonna do it in-house, to write that RFP or RFQ. So that's where Nick would come in, and he does that. He tees stuff up. He's done it for the county, he's done it for cities all over Eastern Oregon. And then we, who are the government agencies, we go out and say, here, we need to go after, and we get our engineers or another engineer or somebody, and we put an RFQ. And then, that firm can either build it, send it out, or they can do a design build. And it gets a little complicated, but somebody's got to start that, unless you've got the engineer in-house. That's your professional services. Or Lisa gets to do a lot of it. It's not that easy, because you've got a lot to do.
So with the grant writer person, would he be doing what you just asked, Lisa, would he be reaching out to the DEQ and the Oregon Water Resources? Or is that our job, or is that?
I would think that we could find that out, but they probably already know all that information anyway.
But he could reach out, whoever it is, could reach out farther and should have that capability to go beyond and then tap whoever the engineer is to say, I need a little more knowledge to put this together.
well, the work that HCR is doing with their focus areas, like they're scoping out projects and there's gonna be, I mean, I would speculate that there's gonna be enough information out there to have a project essentially ready to pursue funding at a state or federal level. So
Just from GSI.
just, and HDR as well. And the work that, that's going on out at West Glen too. Like, there's engineering that's occurring that's being the consortium up to have the information to pursue grants. So there may not be a real big engineering piece associated with the pursuance of grants, because all that work's being done right now. So that's highly beneficial, and then it's just a matter of writing the grant, which that's Nick's specialties.
But that's something that Nick would. Good, anything else from, STP funding? Okay,
You're gonna send that somewhere.
next up would be our update on current legislative issues. Well, yeah, he's gonna be done.
So, I'll, ask Tamara to kind of give us a short review of SB 1154. And did you see that they had a vote today?
I did 3-2, so it
Yeah.
moved out of the Senate Rules Committee to the floor. Justin Green, I think, listened in on that, but he's gone. So, Senate Bill 1154, I think the court's been looking pretty closely at it, was a bill, that really memorializes a lot, for state agencies, a lot of what has transpired in the last year. The Love Guam of the Lower Umatilla Basin learned that kind of the hard way. We designate a basin, so it clarifies how that process works. And then it requires all the state agencies to work together. It also has some really onerous testing and sampling and reporting for anyone who's disposing of wastewater and the farmers. The Board of Commissioners provided a letter it really was neutral, but it questioned, a few things and, also asked them to look at funding sources. So it still has the state agencies, the state declares the groundwater management area. No conversation, no communication with local government and no, but then refers to an voluntary advisory committee with no funding and no resources. So that doesn't really improve things than what we've experienced the last 30 some years in the basin. I think the idea to memorialize state agencies working together is that, the board supported that. I thought that was also a good idea. There's a lot that's been happening with a technical subcommittee over the past several months. So the 100-page bill is now 45 pages. I didn't read it. How many?
18.
I just printed the A and gross version.
Did you get the last update?
Thought I did. So I can't speak more on that, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. The board in their letter, their neutral letter pointed out a bright light that would affect our basin, would give state agencies some flexibility to do things like issue a new water right in an area where they might not otherwise be able to issue a water right. So for example, all of the drinking water wells that we're looking at, they're individual, what are called exempt wells. They do not have a water right attached to them. If a solution, for example, that GSI comes up with is to drill a new community well, that would require a water right. This bill would give OWRD some tools. I don't know exactly how it would work, but to grant permission for a water right for a new community well. That's pretty important, I think, for the work we're doing here. It also has all kinds of metering requirements, which is expensive and onerous, but honestly, exempt wells are not metered. So your exempt wells means you can use 20,000 gallons per day and irrigate a half an acre. I've had complaints filed in the county planning office, 2 counties. Water Resources doesn't have the staff to do anything about it. If you meter it, and if you have competing neighbors, that's pretty, and you're competing for a water source, let alone a clean water source, that's pretty important. So metering is kind of a mixed bag. That wasn't exactly the short version of it, wasn't that? So it is moving to the floor. And Kelly might know more, or Lisa might know more about it.
I think that reduced quite a bit. There's different things and you talked about, a lot of those things have been removed.
The monitoring.
In the new amendment, the new amendment is pretty watered down. Matter of fact, our water community group, we hold our support for it.
Oh.
We did, just thought it was too watered down. Doesn't help our Lugloma much at all. And it was written to help other Luglomas, going forward.
Mhm.
But it was still the basic
Mhm.
voluntary measures, voluntary this, no rules, no regulations. And it just looked like it was just going to be the same thing that we have experienced for 35 years. So what was the point of the legislation?
Yeah.
So, our water group, our community group is hoping that they actually, in no better terms, cancel that out, let it fail and rewrite something next year with a little more time, and a little more effort. A lot more community input. I think their rules committee was comprised of, basically not the community. And big ag and big industry talk, and like I say, it really got watered down, and I don't know if you've read that version or not yet, Cameron, but it's pretty nondescript. They may have even taken out, and there was a few things, that we did oppose, which was giving up our 15K gallons a minute, and they were going to limit us to 5 if we gave up that water right. And that's just not something that well owners in the community wanted to do. So there was a few reasons that we felt, I think Food and Water Watch pulled out. I don't know what H2A GPO did. They were kind of neutral in their communications. So it was an interesting, at least it started something. It started the conversation going, it wasn't perfect and it's not perfect. And I think it just needed a deeper conversation and more time to get it right. And, you know, to learn from our mistakes that we've had here
Mhm.
was, you know, the biggest take that I felt is like, yeah, we know we gotta start earlier, we gotta have things in place, you know, some rules. Getting those agencies together, like you said, Tamara, you know, but that was mandated from EPA mandated that, so that will continue with or without legislation.
Mhm.
It was disappointing, but it was a step forward, I think.
And Ryan just called me, that was one of the calls I had to take out here, but the board's gonna continue to just keep a neutral position and not move forward with anything else, but she again said it was very watered down.
Yeah, it was turned into a process bill.
Oh,
It just lost all of its guts.
does she have like a summary, a bullet summary that she does for you?
She probably will tomorrow at our first meeting.
Okay, I might tune in for that. Yeah, because I mean, it's a slug. It was 100 pages and I mean, I don't mind doing that. It's just got other priorities in the office than to track this, so.
My husband keeps telling me.
Yeah.
Don't you have something better to
Is she
read?
gonna talk also tomorrow and give a brief on, 1153? Cause they're 4 and 3 are kind of, connected and they're both problematic. for us.
Yeah, I don't know if she is,
Okay.
but
I'll let you talk to her tomorrow, because, and both of them are problematic. I've read them and I'm kind of watered down now, so we'll maybe go away, so do something better.
I think the word on the street that I heard was they wanted to move it out of this to keep it alive for next session, but
Oh,
nobody thought that it would actually pass any farther than this.
Hmm.
That was the underground word.
Hmm.
I don't know what-
All right. Anything else, Tony?
not on this one.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do you have another?
Right?
Do I have another one? No, not okay.
The other one that I'm really watching is the Capcom request, that's SB 5531. It's been submitted, it's in, they've had public hearings and we're just waiting to see how that goes, and it could just flip in 24 hours, it could wait till the very end of the session. And so we'll keep an eye on that. Just to let you know, not specifically current state legislation, but the West Glen would be funded by SB 5531 potentially. We are also in discussions with Jessica Keys with the CDS Phase 2 funding, and we're going to be looking to develop municipal water systems so they can help with the surrounding areas. I'll be discussing with the Board of Commission next week about having that and put it in place for Irrigan to help them get in a place where we can help the people impacted around Irrigan. West Glen, again, this isn't legislation. We do have a public open house for West Glen community members. They're getting invites. That meeting will be June 18th. Invites will be sent out tomorrow, I believe, if not the next day, and you should be getting those there. We're having even the loop is going to be having a bus go through West Glen to help pick people up and take it to the senior center in Boardman where that meeting will be. And so this is an intimate discussion. We'll have it in English and Spanish, just engaging community members and not just say, well, what's this? We're going to review some of those options and review it. Really would love to have the advisory members come there, participate. I know some of you have connections there in West Glen. And so, board members, if you'd like to go, I can send you an invite. We're trying to make it more the residents so they can have free discussion with their consultants and really talk about several of the different options, whether it's from osmosis down to connecting to the city water, and review some of the options, some of the hills that we have to climb on those, and just get some interaction directly with between hopefully the solution providers and the residents themselves. We'll have 2 more meetings in August and September, so this is the first one. And then when we come back in August and September, hopefully we'll have more knowledge on where the state falls out with this funding, and then how CWC might use some of its funding if the states doesn't. So we're looking forward to that meeting, June 18th, 6 p.m. at the
Senior Center.
Boardman Senior Center. So we're excited about that. June 26th, I'm not sure, it's June 18th.
That was the Umatilla one.
6 p.m. to 7, no, it's an hour or 2 hours.
We're opening it up for 6 to 8. There'll be presentation and then have questions and all that. So we're gonna keep it open to that, but hopefully, you know, we'll have, so if you know people there, please, ask about the flyers, make sure they got them there. And, so we're hoping for a good turnout. So.
Yes, a community member, one of my concerns is the interpretation, translation.
We will have, actually, we've, REV, who's our community outreach, is actually working with ORA and getting, translation items. So the posters will all be in Spanish and English. We'll have, translator devices. So this is specifically set up so we can engage, best with the neighborhood and the residents there.
Yes, my concern is because sometimes we receive a translation interpretation, but sometimes if we only have one person, so that is not enough. Because our brain is working, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to have a really professional interpretations, because sometimes Hispanic, yo hablo español, sometimes it's really hard to try to make some questions.
Makes
So I
sense.
think that is really good. For me, I suggest to have a really professional people there. And we need to encourage the people, especially the Hispanic community, to involve in these issues
And,
and make questions.
appreciate that feedback. One thing, our outreach people could, I don't want to get out too far on the brand, they could almost do it in Spanish, the presentation. REV has that resources. So I will check with them and see if it's looking like it's, maybe we put the English speakers with the translation devices and swap things, just depending on what the show up is.
If you are open for me, something good. So in that way, you get experience.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I've been on that, and I agree, it's a challenge, so, we have a meeting with them, and I'll just reach out to them and see, we gauge the crowd, and we flip if we need to, if we have the resources to do it. Our REV, consultants definitely are fluent and can do that, and so, I'll touch base with them, that's it, this is where, it's not like the OHA people coming down and they only speak English. We've specifically hired them in to be able to have those skills.
Yeah, and did you have an agenda for that, just to review, for example, our main concerns as community members, health issues? Although we have other concerns, for example, with animals. So we need to, we have a specific questions that we need to get a specific, not solutions, but we need to be focused on what's going on, and what we need to do our part as a community members and work together to find the best solutions for this issue.
Let me, I can reach out and see, and, let me see, if nothing else, if I could send it to you, the agendas, and see if we can get that, let you see what it is and see what we can do to post it and make it available, so we can point people to that, so we can see that. Would that be helpful?
It's a great opportunity for community members because we have this space, right? But for years, we try to encourage involve, Hispanic community. And we don't, so it's not too much that people who.
It's tough. We've been trying for a long time. It's tough.
I think we need to find a real, good strategy to try to involve, because this solution need to be together, and we have residents. And I understand that.
So I just looked at the little handout. It does show a couple bullets of what they're discussing, but it doesn't say what time frame in that, but it does say, hey, we're talking feasibility, timelines, estimated costs and that. But I'll see if there's something a little more fleshed out that we can send out. Again, this is something I know I originally came in and said, let's do it last August. And then the state came in and said, let's slow down, get everything in line. And so I'm really excited about this meeting. And like I said, if I have the earbuds on compared to other people, I'm happy with that.
Yes, sometimes in my experience, because I've been the other side, so I have a really, and I'm still learning my technology. But what, I don't have the idea, what you say that English speakers, I'm frustrated, you know? So I understand totally my community, Hispanic community. So sometimes we are afraid to make some questions, you know? We don't need to do that. We need to feel good in that space to make right questions, because when we raise our hands, we make a right questions. Any question is of course. And that's why my concern is that we are in professional. It might take. It's not, if it's necessary to have 2 or 3 people to translate, then you have the time and resources to do that.
Okay. I will check on that and I'll shoot you an email, let you know, just setting expectations. Appreciate the feedback. That's why we have the advisory committee. So sometimes the 4 of us, 5 of us, we kind of get myopic and appreciate that extra input.
So it's 2 hours long?
We have it open
Is it
for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, realistically, I imagine it's gonna be kind of a presentation and then they've got the posters and people can come and ask one-on-one questions. But
Who's gonna answer this?
Rev's gonna be there. They've got that. We've got, some of our engineering groups there. So, our engineering's not so good at Spanish, but yeah. I don't know if Ronan, were you planning to be there? I don't think. He's not part of our design team on that. He's participated and been kind of technical, but.
I think if we have some of these.
The timeline is he part of that?
Oh, yeah.
He's the guru.
I can plan to be there. It's on my calendar.
This is Debbie Rady. I wonder, I'm not going to be, you said it's going to be on the 18th.
Yes.
Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to be there, but it would be great if who's ever taking the questions and getting feedback. We've heard from Ronan some community feedback from the survey, but whatever questions come up, it would be great to record those so that the advisory committee meeting members here, have a broad scope of things that are coming up and things that we need to keep in mind as decisions are made.
Reporting out is
And-
part of the.
Yeah, and
contract.
this is, it's in a format that doesn't really facilitate Zoom, so we don't have a Zoom option for it. But
Okay.
we can check to see about recording. I've got that down here.
But even.
Yeah, or at least, just keep some
Right.
notes or something.
That, what was the question? What was the answer? Right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So, those are the items that we have right now. Sure.
All right, thank you for those reports. Our last item would be public comment. Whoever's doing the Zoom, could you hit the button that shows everybody that's?
I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
Put them in the squares.
Yes, once.
We've got,
That's okay, that's okay.
It's the view, whatever.
It's-
Yeah.
That's okay.
those are
That's it, okay. I just wanted to
We
make
had
sure.
more earlier.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Public comment, you know, we'll just open it up for anybody who wants to make a final comment before we adjourn.
One
And,
more thing, I guess. We have a good email and a mailing address. I mean, I don't know how the notices are going out to people about this meeting, but if it's possible to send an email out to everybody who got tested so that they're aware of this meeting coming up, or getting that word out.
This is Aaron, Debbie. It's only for those in West Glen and Boardman. Us in here again are not invited. We're Morrow. We don't want to blast everybody. It's got to be very focused. Otherwise,
Okay,
we're not going to get the questions answered. That is the big lift, okay?
Okay, but at least make sure everybody that's involved gets notified. It's my point.
Yeah, we have the postcard has it gone out yet? Grace's postcard?
No, we just finalized it tonight, so we gotta print those tomorrow and get them out.
Sure, did we do it?
That was her question in the last email. I think we volunteered for that.
Okay,
Actually, you had, so.
I did, okay.
So we'll get those done tomorrow and.
Okay, I don't wanna forget that, okay, I'll make myself a big note.
Are we able to get Ronan's PowerPoint?
Sure.
Yeah, do you have a copy
Email
of that?
that?
Cameron?
I do, this is a little modification. It's very similar to the steering committee, which was week before last, and it's on the county planning department webpage, and on the ribbon on the left, click on water, and then it's drinking water roadmap steering committee,
And it's number 6.
and it's meeting number 6.
Also, Valerie, do we have a website on the county?
Yes, yeah, there is a page. And there is also, the county has a YouTube channel, and I've got a separate playlist for consortium meetings. So I'll be adding this meeting, and I've got a couple more to add to the YouTube, and I can send out the YouTube link.
I mean, I went to the website today and went onto the consortium, page, but there's just 3 documents.
Yeah,
that are on there, 3 attachments.
I'll get on that.
So that you can add this PowerPoint to it, okay.
Okay.
But the roadmap project that Ronan reported on, there's a lot of background information on that.
That's just part of it. It's nice to see the survey results, because I think there's a lot of questions out there in the community. There's a lot of negativity kind of towards it. It sounded like there was a high percentage versus people that were just for it. So, living out in the county myself and in an area that I think is probably on that roadmap, I have a lot of questions. So I can wait for those, until we have our public meeting there. Because I know it's getting really late.
There's only one slightly elevated well in Wagon Well area. Most of them surprisingly were well below.
And that's just a question, is it on the map? And I think one of my biggest questions just is a community member resident. Are you guys gonna force people to hook up? If somebody's on a well,
That's got to be part of the analysis. That's why I asked
Yeah,
the question,
that's a good
because the cost effectiveness. You're gonna have to look at it, because it is hit and miss around Oregon, that it's probably cheaper to get point source when you look at the data.
I don't disagree.
I mean,
It just seems like if the consortium is gonna spend all this money, whether it's grant money or not, and if you have, let's say there's 30 residents in Wagonville, and 20 of them say no, is it really worth it to get that system out into an area like that? If you're gonna have 20 residents that say, I am totally fine with my well, I don't wanna pay city water, I don't want your hookup, I know I won't live there forever, or they won't live there forever, so I know in city subdivisions, we've done it before, we had property, we developed it, we put a stub out,
go ahead, you can put a stub out for future residents.
Yeah.
Well, we had to pay for it, but if I said no, I don't want it,
Future person does, but it's still gonna cost in that steering committee. You look at that number now, your jaw will hit the floor.
oh, I don't doubt it. But, so those are just questions that I can certainly bring up, at the meeting. I'm just coming in as an advisory, but I also want to come in as a resident, that lives in those areas that, and I don't have a nitrate problem, so.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, it's like. In this specific aspect, putting in all this infrastructure is for an area that's almost mandatory water bottle deliveries.
No, I know.
And so it's kind of like, okay, if you don't want to connect to this healthy water supply, if they show that it is, it's okay, then you're on your own. You have to buy your own water and not connect. But we do need to have a good level of buy-in in order to
And is
justify.
it strictly for drinking water, that they can only utilize it for drinking versus you can't water your lawns? Are they having to get rid of their wells, or is it just supplying people with good water?
You have a lot of good questions.
Nobody is, really, that whole research project is just looking at the feasibility.
But these are all big questions.
Well,
Yeah.
and with Westland, it would be, you have to disconnect your well from your house. You can still continue using your well for irrigation, but you can't use it for your house as
If
to connect.
yeah, that's right, Matt. If extending the water is from the city is the option.
And if they want to irrigate with city water, they
What
can
if you
do
don't want to
that.
drink city water?
Well,
It's not bad.
I can tell you, I had
What if you
a,
don't want to pay for city water?
You're gonna pay either way.
they're gonna pay for
Yeah.
it. I had a visit with someone and came to my office to talk to me, lives in West Glen. And he just said, I'm too old. I don't want to come to a bunch of meetings, so we won't see him at a meeting. But we're happy just continuing to buy bottled water. I'm like, okay, so if we're putting a pipeline down the road, going right by your house, what would you like us to do? And he's like, well, I would hope you put a T in it so that the next person that lives in my house can hook up to water. So I'm pretty confident that even with him, once there is a project and there's the opportunity for a T, that they'll take water into their home as well.
And the meeting on the 18th is really to get it where we can have those discussions with the property owners and say, we understand this, here's these other options. We're not just coming in and saying, cities this, we're talking osmosis, we're talking private wells, we're talking public community.
Understand.
And trying to say, here's all the different costs of it. And the cost for the magic wand is not on the list because we just can't find it. And so, I'd love to, but, so that's what we're still, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully getting, some of them who might have said no before to suddenly say, oh, you're gonna cover all this cost and it's not gonna be horrendous and I don't have to pay city taxes, but I get city water.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have some of those discussions and we can see if it's worth it.
I mean, I pay city of Boardman, but I live in Aragon. We have Red Bulls down there, so,
She can afford well, so she doesn't do well at her house.
well, my well caved in. I really didn't have a choice. They didn't find water until they got to 430
I
feet,
know.
which is a deep one. I've got the farmer's well.
Wow, that's impressive.
Matt, you said something that was concerning for me, was, you said basically you have a choice of hooking up or they won't deliver you water anymore. Is that
Well,
something that you're hearing?
well, the EPA kind of thing is government provides water until a safe water source is made available. And so that's connecting into the city. That would be part of it,
Well, whatever.
and so if we can make that available, and make it, that could be a thing. It is something that I've heard, yes.
Heard or seen, or
From-
do you have a confirmation on that? Cause I think that I've read something different that said basically that they have to provide clean drinking water.
No, they just have to make access to clean drinking water. So if they make access through a community system, then it's like, okay, here's our access.
Would trust them, the government.
Yeah.
Are
So,
you
but
talking
we can look
EPA?
at that.
Well,
EPA is
wait,
going to
yeah.
continue to provide water?
The state, DHS, Department of Human Services, if you have a contaminated well, they are on the hook because of the health issues, not because of the drinking water issues, because of the health issues. That's the way I understood it to read, but I don't know. I just wanted to clarify that. I just, it's
So let-
something that we need to know. We need to know that.
So I don't have it in writing. I have it from several officials, but I will verify and we'll get back with you. That'd be a good discussion thing for CWC. Because this is a lot of work if we're gonna go there and people are just gonna say, "Eh, keep sending me bottles."
Okay,
Great question. I don't have a definitive answer. I'll work on that.
any other comments? Before we,
Yeah,
yeah,
I suggest you explain in a correct way. So if you guys offer, for example, connect with the water, the city water, so we need to review a specific pros and cons for everyone, because each family or each community member, they have their own needs. And I think economy is health, economy, animals, and we need to think in our present, but we need to think in the next generation. So we need to make a balance to find that correct solution. So then, in the meeting, we can collect, for example, this is my opinion, my pro, and this is my con, like a balance.
That's it.
That can, and Chair, if I can just add, I think this meeting next week is the first. It's not a one and done. But this would be the first time that with county, with a contractor from the REV program to meet with everybody just to talk about West Glen, not the two county area. So if there are questions that aren't answered, then we'll have a list and we can follow up with specific information. There's about 100 different parcels and landowners probably have 100 different opinions about it,
Yeah,
So
of
it's
course.
different for each family, each household.
And I understand too, this is a really long term to.
Yes, it
find
is.
solutions, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we need to encourage the people. Because I know, and I hear some opinions, I don't want to be part of the meeting because I don't want to lose my time. Because we don't have a really quick solution. We need to understand really what is the problem. It's not good. About if we work together, so we work and walk together to find solutions.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has experience with difference and tons of experience. But we are here. We are here together to find just one solution. Yeah, we require, right? And yeah, that's it.
all right, well, thank you all for coming. Any more questions? We'll call the meeting adjourned.